On May 1st, 1971, the National Railroad Passenger Corporation, better known as Amtrak, assumed operation of America's struggling passenger rail network. To celebrate its 51st birthday, here's every Amtrak route I've ever ridden, ranked based on both what I think of them as services and what the experience of riding them was like. Number 17, Capital Limited. Granted, I only rode this train during the overnight portion from South Bend to Pittsburgh, but in that run, we went through some pretty populated cities like Cleveland, which would really benefit from daytime trains. Instead, we had crowds of people pouring onto the train in the middle of the night, which I'm sure wasn't pleasant for anyone involved. And I nearly missed my connection in Pittsburgh due to a 2-hour delay. Number 16, Texas Eagle. Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio are some of America's biggest cities, and this is the only train that connects them all, running only once a day. Not only that, but this train doesn't have an observation car, which would have been really nice on my journey from Austin to San Antonio. Granted, I know you can't have everything, but this train takes over a day to run its full route, and it already has Surfliners, so why not? I will give this one points over the Capital Limited though, due to its through cars to the Sunset Limited. That's pretty cool. Number 15, Downeaster. I was really excited to ride this one when I went to college in Boston, and I was finally able to in the last month or so in which they ran the Ocean View Dome car in 2018. It didn't live up to the hype. The scenery was fairly bland until close to Portland, and the dome car was in poor shape with dirty windows. I've wanted to take this again to visit the Seashore Trolley Museum, but there's sadly no transit or walking connection between the train and the museum. This has the potential to be a really good corridor train, but right now its speed and frequency limit its advantage over coach buses or driving. Number 14, Cascades. This one absolutely one-ups the Downeaster for scenery, and the Capital Limited and Texas Eagle for being a sensible corridor service where it's needed. From the Willamette Valley to Port Defiance, for as long as that part lasts, the windows of Cascades never fail to disappoint. What are disappointing, however, are the Talgos used on the route. Sleek and streamlined on the outside, these cars have European-style seats that don't recline much, and I couldn't imagine comfortably enjoying these all the way from, say, Seattle to Eugene. And given the distance the trains have to cover, combined with interference from freight traffic, delays are sadly common on this route. My sister and I had to wait over an hour at Olympia for our northbound train. Number 13, Hartford Line. This route is super short, and the scenery is exciting for about 45 seconds of the route. But what the Hartford Line lacks in pizzazz, it more than makes up for in functionality. The frequency is amazing, especially when combined with the state-supported commuter trains it parallels, and the tickets are quite affordable. Looking at you, Keystone. I will say, though, that the system's integration with CT rail trains has the potential to be confusing to the average transit rider. Number 12, Palmetto. This is a special train in Amtrak's southern system, running a long-distance service from the Northeast Corridor to Georgia entirely during the day, and scoring decent ridership in the process. I rode it between Philly and Charleston in 2017, my first time off the Keystone or Northeast corridors, and it had me hooked on long-distance train travel by the end. I talked with a lot of people on the train, and even scored some takeout Chinese food from a conductor when the train was late. This is a train with okay scenery, not quite as charming as the Crescent or as grand as the Western routes, but it's a workhorse, and it gets you where you need to go. Number 11, Acela. I have mixed feelings on this train. On the one hand, it's really cool looking and quite fun to ride, especially the one time I took it in first class. It definitely has speed to its advantage as well, although the debate rages on as to whether it's truly high-speed rail. However, there are plenty of drawbacks to the service. For one thing, the seats are a bit less comfortable than on Amfleet cars, and for another, it's hardly ever practical to take, as it's expensive, and flying is usually going to be cheaper and faster. Come to think of it, America is unique in having high-speed rail as a premium product. In most other countries, it's decently affordable and meant for the traveling public. I hope Amtrak takes notes, sooner or later. Number 10, Pennsylvanian. While a shadow of its ancestor, the Broadway Limited, the Pennsylvanian is still the stuff of legend, with a beautiful route between Pittsburgh and Harrisburg that people ride simply for the sake of riding it. While this is absolutely a train that I enjoy riding, and would recommend for everyone to try, it does have its drawbacks. It runs between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh only once a day in each direction, despite connecting the two most populous cities in Pennsylvania. It's somewhat slower than driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike, and the cell and Wi-Fi connections during a lot of the route leave something to be desired. Number 9, Empire Builder. The train that built Glacier National Park is a bit of a mixed bag. I rode it eastbound from Edmonds to Chicago at the start of my rail pass adventure, and while the first evening and morning were fantastic, taking us through the Cascades and the Rockies, after Glacier, the land flattened out, and we rode through monotonous windswept prairies and farmlands. It has always been sold as a grand experience, and it is for only about a third of its route, hence why it's going in the middle of this list. Number 8, Crescent. Once a holdout of privatized intercity passenger rail, this route is one of the most memorable on the East Coast, giving riders like myself a scenic tour of the Deep South that never gets too old or monotonous. If you're okay with there being trees along the line for most of its run, this is absolutely worth the experience, and the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway is not something to be missed. Number 7. Coast Starlight. This one grew on me, as I rode it from Sacramento to Seattle last summer. Going through the mountains of southern Oregon felt underwhelming after the California Zephyr. But as the day wore on, I learned to love this train, and all of the unique scenery it passes through. It's not quite as grand as the inland routes, but it more than makes up for it in varied landscapes, beautiful views, and a route that connects plenty of places and people. Number 6. Southwest Chief. Though lacking the grandiosity of the Zephyr or the Builder, this train makes up for it with consistently wild, unspoiled landscapes, from the deserts of northern Arizona to the windswept prairies of New Mexico. This was the train that gave us the Superliners, and it remains a vital link to this day, connecting the Eastern Rail network with America's second largest city. The Chief was a good train to meet people on and relax on after long days of adventures, and my only major issue is that we got stuck in Kansas City for half a day. Then again, I had a lot of fun in KC, so who's complaining? Number 5. Sunset Limited. Coming in just a hair above the Chief, the Sunset Limited cuts through the heart of America's southern deserts, flirting with the Mexican border and connecting the Big Easy with the City of Angels. When I rode it from San Antonio to Maricopa, it gave me an amazing sense of how big our country is, and how beautiful the harsh desert landscapes could be. It does, however, have terrible frequency, with less than one train per day in each direction, so I'm not sure how much good it actually does as a dependable way to move passengers. Number 4. Northeast Regional. While this train doesn't have the greatest scenery, it's a workhorse, easily the most popular train in Amtrak's system. There are enough trains on the schedule to get you where you need to go, when you need to get there, and I've used it to get between home and college plenty of times. It's the train that most people probably think of when they think of Amtrak, at least if they're from the East Coast. Sure, the AM fleets could use replacements yesterday, but overall, it's about the best intercity rail our country has at the moment. Number 3. Pacific Surfliner. This train is basically every nostalgic synth-laden song about the Southern California coast, turned into a frequent, reliable corridor train. It hits the best of both worlds, an unforgettable scenic experience along the Pacific Ocean, and a practical service. I will say, ride the bi-level cars while you still can. The views are just not going to be as good when they're replaced with single levels. Number 2. Keystone. Okay, I'm biased, but this is the train I grew up riding, and it took me until adulthood to realize how unique it is. My home city of Lancaster has fast, frequent, electrified intercity rail, something that is incredibly rare in the United States, outside of the Northeast Corridor. And I can tell you from experience, people here use it and even take it for granted. Perhaps other states should take a closer look at what we're doing. Oh, and did I mention the views of Lancaster County are fantastic? And finally, number 1, California Zephyr. How could this not be everyone's number 1 train? The Zephyr is a 3-day panoramic portrait of the United States from start to finish. From flat farmland to prairies to mountains to deserts to the California Delta, this train is always delivering something new out the window. It's an experience that every American should have at least once, and it's a great way to meet new people, have great conversations, and get some creative work done. This is Amtrak long-distance travel at its finest, the train that people come from around the world to ride. If you haven't ridden this yet, what are you waiting for? Go book a ticket. And that, everyone, is my highly subjective ranking of every Amtrak route I've ever ridden. If you disagree with my takes, let me know in the comments, and we'll have a lively discussion about them. In the meantime, take care until the next video.
Like the hiding sun, waiting for summer.